Hello viewers, it's Josie. Welcome back to Eclectic Movie Reviews. Bear with me here, gotta get another pillow to prop myself up a little more. So that way you can see me upright a little better. Halloween is this upcoming Thursday, and with that in mind, I decided to do a just a little spooky season movie write-up, discussing some of the films I watched during spooky season 2024, and then I'm going to give awards after. But first things first, okay, so I'm going to talk about 5 films that stood out to me, and then I'm going to talk about my awards. I'm not going to talk about all the films I watched during the spooky season because I don't want to make this video too long. But anyway, let's start with Jonathan Demme's adaptation of Beloved from 1998. This adaptation of Toni Morrison's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. The story follows a freed slave woman named Sethe, played by Oprah Winfrey, and her daughter Denver, played by Kimberly Elise, as they tried to build a stable life for themselves, doing their best to move on from the past in a post-Civil War era. And then a man named Paul D, played by Danny Glover, comes into the picture. Sethe and Paul D knew each other from when they were at the Sweet Home Farm in Kentucky, and then they start a relationship. Paul D hopes to get Sethe back on her feet again, but there are secrets that she is harboring. She happens to be harboring. And then a strange woman who calls herself Beloved enters the picture, offering assistance to Sethe. However, like I said, there are dark secrets being harbored. Beloved is a manipulative and destructive woman. And then the narrative takes a supernatural turn with a twist that I do not want to spoil. This is a really strong, underrated adaptation. All the performances are fantastic. Oprah and Donald Glover are both excellent, but the standout here is Thandie Newton. She is fiercely terrifying here. I mean, it is an injustice that she wasn't nominated for an Oscar here. I always found Thandie Newton to be a really underappreciated actress. And what's interesting about her acting here is that she sort of acts like a baby. At first, kind of like how Emma Stone's character does at the beginning of Poor Things, except Beloved is evil. So Beloved's also a very relevant film to now with the election coming up. Without giving spoilers away, what gave Toni Morrison the idea for Beloved, speaking vaguely, was that women of color did not have as good access to safe abortions as white women did. And what's really thought-provoking about both the novel and the film of Beloved is the allegorical examination of African-American generational trauma on both a personal mental health level and a macro collective level. I think that despite Jonathan Demme being obviously not a man of color, a white director, I think he handles the subject matter with deep sensitivity because he doesn't focus on the characters just as stats, if you know what I mean. They're portrayed as complex human beings first, and Sethe's journey of healing is just so beautiful. And it's for such a celebrated novel, the film isn't talked about that much when I think it should be more. And next up is a Hammer film from 1968, directed by Terence Fisher, called The Devil Rides Out. Set in southern UK countryside, Duke de Richelieu / Nicholas, I forget how to pronounce the name, played by Christopher Lee, and his pal Rex Van Lin, played by Leon Green, visit protege slash surrogate son, Simon Aaron, played by Patrick Mower. That would be Nicholas's protege slash surrogate son. He took care of him. And they notice that Simon has been engaging in some quite odd behaviors. It turns out that he is under the manipulative thumb of an occult leader named Mokata, played excellently by Charles Gray. As a team, Nicholas and Rex work on saving Simon and another protege, Tanith. This movie constantly puts you on the edge of your seat because you root for the safety of the characters. That's a testament to the performances of the ensemble, along with the sensitive screenplay by Richard Matheson, based on Dennis Wheatley's novel of the same title. Not just because it was based on a novel, the esoteric and occult elements in the narrative here feel very literary. They don't feel like overly goofy. Like they have a concise narrative flow to them. Christopher Lee has cited this as his favorite of the Hammer films he's done, and that makes total sense. It's definitely probably my favorite Hammer film that I've seen. I'm not sure about its streaming availability, but it is on DVD and Blu-ray, and I very much recommend you check that out. Next up, I'm going to talk about a South Korean film called An Empty Dream from 1965, directed by Yoo Hyun Mok. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but I found out about this film through Elric Kane on the Pure Cinema podcast. I think this is actually a remake of a Japanese film, Tetsuji Takechi's Daydream, that came out the previous year in '64. Now, I have not seen that film, for I don't think it's available, but at least from what I know. Anyway, An Empty Dream follows a man and woman who meet in the waiting room at the dentist's. And when they're sedated under anesthesia, they share a surreal arrived journey together in a dream world. The dentist is also a part of their dream, as he is the villain figure. This movie is a beautifully romantic wild ride that almost plays out like a German expressionist film. The sets in the dream sequences are pretty outstanding. This would make a great double feature with A Page of Madness from 1926, as far as the surreal dream logic is concerned. With the dentist involved, you could even say it's like a German expressionist film crossed with Eraserhead and Little Shop of Horrors, the dentist. So the two lovers in An Empty Dream basically go through whatever subconscious fears and desires they have in whatever sphere they're in. It's if you're interested, definitely give it a watch. It's also surprisingly uplifting in a way I wasn't expecting. An Empty Dream is available to watch on YouTube. Next up, and this is sort of the opposite scenario of An Empty Dream, and I'll explain. So, The Enchanting Shadow from 1960. I forgot I forget the name of the director. I forgot to write it down here. I'm so sorry. So, this is based on a novel that was adapted again later in 1987 as a Chinese ghost story starring Leslie Chung, which I tried watching on YouTube on a playlist, but there were no subtitles. But I will say that I loved The Enchanting Shadow. Set during the tail end of the Ming Dynasty of China, and the story follows a scholar named Ning Kei-chin, played by Zhao Lei or Lei Zhao, as he spends the night at a temple and befriends a Taoist swordsman named Yan Qixia, played by Yang Qi Qiang. Ching, who is sort of the mentor figure of the narrative. And then through him, he meets and falls in love with a gorgeous and kind-hearted female ghost named Nie Xiao Xian. I don't want to go beyond that plot description, but it's a super beautiful movie. The sets and costuming are stunning. It's romantic. The fantasy elements are super intriguing. And just like an empty dream, you can watch this on YouTube. And then next up, the final film I'm going to talk about here before I get to the awards is The People Under the Stairs from 1990, written, directed by, I believe he wrote it too, if I'm not mistaken, unless someone else wrote it and I didn't check. So the protagonist here in The People Under the Stairs is a young African-American boy named Poindexter Williams who calls himself Fool. And what's interesting is that in the beginning of the film, you see like tarot cards and you see the Fool card. Fool's mother is undergoing a cancer battle with financial constraints. The Williamses are on the verge of being evicted out of their apartment, as ordered by their landlords, Mr. and Mrs. Robeson, aka Mommy and Daddy. And their deal is purchasing run-down apartments in bad shapes and intentionally raising rent in order for renters to get evicted. The end game being having those poorly managed buildings sold to gentrifiers to make money. Mr. and Mrs. Robeson are heartlessly disparaging to their daughter Alice. Under the persuasion from Leroy and Spencer, two men Fool happens to be friendly with, they plan on a break-in with Spencer pretending to be a municipal handyman. Spencer goes missing, so Fool and Leroy go searching for him in the house, only to discover a bunch of odd-looking children trapped under the floor. Leroy gets killed, and so it's up to the Fool to survive and escape on his own. He comes across Alice, and then she helps him on his escape route. There's a lot of clever social commentary in this film regarding gentrification that still rings true today. I would actually consider this a good horror film for those who don't necessarily like horrors because it plays out like a comedy, a violent social class comedy. And having two kids be the heart of the film also gives it a vibe sort of akin to Monster Squad. It adds an accidental cuteness that balances out the scariness, if that makes sense. Although I would not call The People Under the Stairs necessarily I would not call it a family-friendly horror. It's not. But I think that if a preteen or young teen, I think if they're open-minded enough, I think they could get a kick out of it. And because of themes regarding social class, The People Under the Stairs would make a great double feature with Parasite. And so it's available on DVD and Blu-ray, and you can watch it on Shudder and Peacock. That is The People Under the Stairs. Now let's get to the awards. Okay, for the Dysfunctional Family Award, I'm giving it to Spider Baby from 1967. It's currently streaming on the Criterion Channel, and you can also watch it on YouTube. And it might be on Tubi, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Best Teen Movie, The Girl on the Broomstick from 1972. This is such a delightful movie. It's like, I found this on the Criterion Channel. It's basically like a Czechoslovakian version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It's pretty great. It's very, it's very, the imagery is very odd in a good way. For VFX, Yokai Monsters, 100 Monsters from 1968. For sound, I'm giving it to Pulse from 2001. I am also giving Pulse editing. Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse from 2001 specifically. For best score, I'm giving it to Patrick Doyle's score for Needful Things in 1993. For best makeup and hair, Horrors of Malformed Men from 1969. For best costumes, Beloved from 1998. For Best Production Design Contemporary, sort of, this is a bit of a cheat, kind of, I mean, I'm giving it to The People Under the Stairs from 1990, even though that was 34 years ago. I guess you could still consider it contemporary, I guess. For Production Design Period, I'm giving it to The Devil Rides Out from 1968. For Cinematography Color, Quaidon from 1964. Cinematography Black and White, An Empty Dream from 1965. Adapted Screenplay, Richard Matheson, The Devil Rides Out, 1968. Original Screenplay, The People Under the Stairs, 1990. Supporting Actress, Tandy Newton from Beloved, 1998. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't say the names of the titles. Not that no, shouldn't give the years next to the titles if I already explained them. Actually, nah, I'll do it anyway. I'll remind you guys. Supporting actor Charles Gray for The Devil Rides Out, 1968. If I may have said that already, but forgive me if I did. For lead actress, Karen Black, Burnt Offerings, 1976. Really fantastic haunted house family drama with Oliver Reed, Karen Black, and Bette Davis. Really a horrific examination of American materialism. And terrifying performance from Karen Black. Really great there. For Best Actor, Lead Actor, Lee Zhao for The Enchanting Shadow from 1960. For Best Ensemble, Needful Things, 1993. For Best Love Story, The Enchanting Shadow, 1960. For Best Director, Yoo Hyun-mook, if I'm pronouncing correctly, An Empty Dream, 1965. And for Best Picture, The People Under the Stairs. Well, it was a pleasure sharing this video with you. I hope you enjoyed. I hope everybody has a super happy Halloween. I'm going to be dressing up as a beekeeper. Once again, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now, and happy Halloween.